Welcome to That's No Bull podcast with your host, Terry Nearens, on the KAPOW Radio Show Network. Real people, real talk, real solutions. That's No Bull podcast is brought to you by fifthhookmedia.com, where you will find relevant books, music, videos, and podcasts. fifthhookmedia.com, fifthhookmedia.com.
Hi, everybody. My name is Terry Nearens, and you're here with That's No Bull. We're here today with my good friend, Dr. Vernon Kilbourn. Vernon is a retired chiropractor. He's into holistic medications, holistic healing. He does a weekly, bi-weekly, or a twice-a-week talk?
2 times a month.
2 times a month, bi-weekly talk on brain and gut health. And today, Vern's going to tell us, first of all, a little bit about him, why he is more into the natural health, and a little bit about today's going to talk a little bit about calcium and a little bit about how we're living in today's society. So I'm going to turn things over to you, Vern. Welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Terry. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm a retired chiropractor, not necessarily because I want to, but I had a bad accident 43 years ago. I fractured my cervical spine in 2 places in a hang gliding accident and became a quadriplegic. So I have not been in active practice since that time, but I still keep an active license. I now hold the oldest license, active license, in the state of Utah. I keep my license because I'm interested in healthcare and the new developments that are taking place. So I try to follow the new research, some of it that I've been to seminars on the last several years is not even released for the general public yet. It'll probably be 4 or 5 years before it gets published in textbooks that we can spread this information around. And I won't discuss that today, but the brain-gut axis and its reaction with the immune system of the human body is just one of the biggest breakthroughs that we've had in health science in many, many years. I'm pleased that I'll just mention that 70 to 80% of your immune system comes from your gut, and it has effect on the brain, and the brain has effect on your gut. So I'll leave it with that, but I keep active in these things, and I try as much as I can to get people interested in their own health, because there does not have to be, nor is there, a pill that cures every ill. We are causing most of our illnesses in the lifestyle that we live. Now, I'll start out with this illustration. I guess it's an illustration, but we are living in an adrenal society. Our population on a daily basis is functioning on adrenaline. And this cannot happen without the side effects that and eventually will really kill you. Now that's probably a statement that I need to explain, and I'll try to do that. I'm not a scholar, and I've never been called a scientist because I'm not. I just like everyday living, and I like common sense and logic. So let's see what happens when you get an adrenal reaction. You get excited over just different things. You can get an adrenal reaction from watching a television program.
Like a horror movie?
Yes, a horror movie.
Okay.
Witnessing an auto accident, being frightened, worry. All of these things trigger an adrenal reaction. Now keep in mind, and if you don't remember anything about this discussion today, remember two things. Adrenaline and insulin are antagonists. They fight with each other.
So is there like a little boxing match going on in our body?
It's more than a boxing match. The adrenal reaction triggers the fight and flight or flight mechanism in the primitive man. It's been with us since mankind evolved or was placed here, wherever you happen to decide where the human race came from. That's up to you. I'm not going to get into a
We'll get into that in another show.
But what happens when you get the adrenaline reaction? Your blood pressure instantly increases. Your pulse rate instantly increases. Your blood supply goes to your skeletal muscles. You're going to run or you're going to fight. Your blood supply diminishes going to the digestive organs. Food that is not properly digested putrefies and becomes a toxin to you. So let's look now at insulin. Insulin does what? It lowers blood sugar, right? Okay, if adrenaline is kicked in and adrenaline is working, you're not producing insulin, and you have automatically, with the fight or flight mechanism, increased your sugar in your blood. So, you're going to have a higher blood sugar, are you not? Does this make sense?
It makes sense. So
Okay.
Is that why that leads to when we are completely exhausted after we have that adrenaline rush, when our body just feels like it's been beaten up and we've been run over by a Mack truck? Is that adrenaline crash?
That's amen, because your sugar level is so high, your sugar gets metabolized, and the byproduct of sugar metabolism is lactic acid. And that's an irritant. It gets in your muscles and make you ache. But now don't get me wrong, there are many people that have diabetes. We need to take this serious. But many people are being treated for diabetes that don't have it, and they shouldn't be. But the craze now is that you're pre-diabetic. Well, you're pre-diabetic the day you're born. But
Well, some people, they say that what your diabetic blood level is anywhere between 80 and 120 is a common good level. But I have a friend who they claim is diabetic, but she really does better when her blood sugar is right around 220. She starts to feel a little shaky and everything when her blood drops down to 150 even. She gets that little bit of shaky to her. So I think some people normally function a little bit better with a high blood sugar. I mean, is that standard something that they've been looking into changing?
Well, that standard has changed, and I was in a seminar over 40 years ago, and the instructor at that seminar said the big push by Big Pharma is going to be in prescribing diabetic medicine. They're going to start lowering the standard of accepted levels, and that's been dropping down from 140 down to the now 120 and lower, and then the 80 on the lower end. Some people are experiencing hypoglycemia starting around 85.
And that's where you start to get the shakiness and you lack of energy, get confusion.
Absolutely. It happens, and any of you that have been around a diabetic person knows that sometimes they're given too much insulin and that blood level drops down and they can't function. I had one of my neighbors, I was operating a chop saw, cutting 2x4s and 2x6s at different lengths and angles. And this gentleman, his family had given him an extra dose of insulin, and he was standing and leaning up against the table and almost got his arm chopped off with a saw. And he was in a stupor. So naturally, in this situation, they had to give him the high volume sugar to get him out of it. But I've seen people that actually have gone into a coma with low blood sugar. And to me, the chronic low blood sugar is more dangerous than a little higher level of sugar. Because I know of people, if they get down to 40 and even once in a while 30, they're passed out. Well, I've seen people with the high rating clear up into the 900s. And of course, if it's there, yes, you have to bring that down. That's too high. But they didn't die from it.
And they didn't go into a diabetic coma?
No. So I've watched these things over the years, and the testing used to be what they call the glucose tolerance tests.
Mm-hmm.
You don't very often hear about the glucose tolerance tests, but they were time consuming, they were uncomfortable, but they were pretty accurate.
But you had to do them. I remember when I was pregnant, we had to do them. It was a 5-hour test. I had to fast and then consume the liquid. It was very sugary liquid, almost like a syrupy orange pop. And then they drew blood every hour to see how my blood level or my sugar levels dropped each hour.
Yes, and they timed it. They gave you this nasty drink.
It was terrible.
Oh, it was horrible. And like I say, and so now the A1C is the popular thing.
Natural
But-
cholesterol? Or what is A1C?
A1C checks your glucose level over a period of time.
Okay, so it's just a different test?
It's a different test, and it's apparently replaced the glucose tolerance test. But my feeling is that anyone, before they go on a diabetic regime of medication, that the A1C is checked at least twice before they come into being given these medications. Because once you get on them, that upsets your entire body physiology.
So is there a possibility that once you start taking insulin, your body has a natural, like when you start taking opiates, your body's natural brain receptors and endorphins and everything shut down because now you've got something that is artificially enhancing that problem, so your body doesn't produce it. Is that the same when you start taking insulin without actually needing it? Could that actually shut down your pancreas from developing the insulin that it would normally develop?
Absolutely. Any body part that is not used will dissipate. Well, not dissipate.
Atrophy?
Atrophy, disuse atrophy. If you don't use a muscle, if you don't exercise your arm, you get disuse atrophy. If you have a broken leg and you keep it in a cast for just 2 weeks, your thigh measurement will decrease by at least 2 inches because of the disuse atrophy.
Puts a new meaning to the term, use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. Amen. That's just the way it works.
So, speaking of using it or losing it and talking about muscle building and bones and stuff like that, calcium, we had a conversation the other day about calcium that I found to be extremely interesting because that is the one thing, especially being a woman, that they push on us all the time. Taking calcium for healthy bones, healthy teeth, hair, skin, nails, things like that. You mentioned that we should be taking calcium a specific way. Would you like to discuss that a little bit?
Yes, I would. That's one of the reasons that I have started these classes every 2 weeks, and I will continue giving them until there's no interest. If people aren't interested in taking care of their own health, then if they don't care, I've reached the point, why should I care? But I still do anyway. But the incidence with calcium was brought to my attention last summer, a year ago. And it was either in August or September. But there was an article in the newspapers that women that were taking supplemental calcium should stop taking it because if they were taking the supplemental calcium, it increased their risks of having stroke and heart attack. Well, I cannot go along with this theory because the problem is the calcium utilization. Now, I said I'm not a chemist. I haven't done these lab tests, but I have done much research into lab tests on calcium utilization. I know that there's a North Pole, but I haven't been there. But I talk to people that have been there, and I take their word, yes, there's a North Pole. Maybe it isn't where it's supposed to be with the new GPS stuff, but that's superfluous information.
And I won't say Santa's not there either.
The thing about calcium is every single cell in your body needs calcium to function. Now you ask people, and 9 out of 10 will tell you calcium is for strong teeth and bones.
Right.
Okay, that's true to a certain respect. But your blood level calcium is more important because your body will rob your bones and teeth of calcium to keep your blood level calcium up, because calcium is the thing that triggers your heartbeat.
So that's what leads to lack of calcium leads to osteoporosis?
It certainly does. And it may not be the lack of calcium, but it's the utilization of the calcium that you're taking.
Okay.
Now, I mentioned earlier that my philosophy is common sense and logic. Okay, Tums are a big candy item right now. People throw those things down like the jelly beans in Ronald Reagan. Oh yes. Now, this you're going to have to listen closely, because calcium utilization depends on certain things that physiologically must take place. The first item is you have to have a calcium that is readily absorbed by the human body. But I would gather that probably 80% of the calcium that is consumed in this country today is calcium carbonate. And test after test show that calcium carbonate is not readily absorbed by the human body.
What about coral calcium? That's a big one.
Coral calcium, it's another sales pitch. Coral calcium can sit there on those reefs for hundreds and thousands of years, and it doesn't dissolve. So do you think that it's going to dissolve in your stomach within the first 2 to 3 hours?
No.
So getting back to that, the calcium must be dissolved in the stomach proper in the presence of hydrochloric acid. Contrary to popular belief, most older adults do not produce enough hydrochloric acid. So the calcium must be dissolved and absorbed within the first 7 feet of the intestinal tract. That's where absorption of calcium takes place. And if it's dissolved in the first 7 feet, then it must have a carrier vitamin D3 or 2, depending. You wonder what vitamin D3, vitamin D2, what's the difference? Well, one of them's plant source, the other one's animal source. They both do the same thing. But you must have the vitamin D to get it out of the stomach and into the bloodstream. Then it must be taken out of the bloodstream and into the interstitial fluids of the body so it can be utilized. And the only way it can get out of the stomach is through the process of the omega-3 fatty acids. And there's many, many, many of them. So just the last 4 or 5 years particularly, somebody somewhere has awakened to the fact that we're not getting enough vitamin D, and so they are promoting it. One of the first things they do now is ask you what your vitamin D level is if you're taking a supplemental vitamin D. Well, that's a problem because you take the calcium out of the stomach and into the bloodstream, and if it stays there, then it does become a hazard to you. It increases your risk of stroke and heart attack because your blood is thickened by the amount of calcium that's there. So you got to get it out of there. And that's the part that they leave out of the formula when you're taking the calcium as a supplement. They don't tell you about the omega-3 fatty acids. And they're from many sources, so I won't go into those. I'll challenge you to look up what the
Fish oil is one of them.
but it's fish oil, olive oil, coconut oil. These are high in the omega-3 fatty acids. But let's get back to the common sense thing about the Tums. Okay, the first thing you have in the Tums, it's an antacid. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You've got calcium there that must be dissolved in your stomach in the presence of hydrochloric acid, and you've neutralized it. And to start with, it's calcium carbonate, which for your sake, in this case, you're not absorbing enough of it to increase your blood level calcium very much because it isn't getting there. And I'll just throw this in on top of it. Most of the little calcium tablets you take are white, hard calcium pills. Put one of them in a cup of water and see how long it takes for that tablet to dissolve. I've had them sit there in a cup of water for 3 days. They never dissolve. Well, they go through your intestinal tract, and pardon the expression, you poop them out in the toilet.
That's flushing your money down the toilet quick.
That's amen, brother. And why am I so concerned about this? Because one of the first patients that I had when I started practice back in 1961, when I got out of chiropractic college, I took some x-rays of a lady that had been in a little automobile accident. And as I was developing the x-rays, now I'm from back there when you took the x-rays and then you had to take them in the dark room and you had to put them in the developer and then the fixer and then you rinse them off and hang them up to dry. Well, this took a long time. But while I was reviewing the x-rays in the dark room, I noticed these white dots all along the intestinal tract. And my first thought, here we've got metastatic cancer of some sort. But as I looked at them closer in the black light, I could see that they were all very uniform in shape. And I thought, ooh, what's going on here? Well, I went ahead and developed the x-ray, put them up to dry and finished the examination of the lady. Now, this lady owned her own health food store. So as I was asking her questions, I said, are you taking some kind of maybe calcium supplement? And she said, well, yes, I take 4 of them a day. And I said, okay, that answers the question. We'll discuss this a little bit further because you have a little problem here. One of them is you're not absorbing the calcium you're taking. And the other thing is you have a little problem with constipation because there are 14 calcium tablets that I can count in your intestinal tract. So that means they've been in there. That's a 3-day supply. So you haven't been going to the bathroom here the last several days. Well, that got me very curious, and so I've watched calcium and calcium utilization since that time. So if you're going to take a supplemental calcium, then do the complete formula. You've got to have the digestive enzymes. If you don't have enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach, and most adults do, you can look this up again if you want to, just don't take my word for it. But there are very, very few cases of actual hyperacidity in the stomach. So we'll just leave it at that. And
I have read a couple of reports that say basically the same thing, that, you know, they push the antacids and everything, but it's actually not a overabundance of stomach acid. It's a lack of enough stomach acid that causes some of the issues that people are having, that they are falsely thinking is indigestion or heartburn.
yes, and a lot of that is putrefaction. It's a toxic, there are bases and acids, and you can get a burn out of a base just the same as you can an acid. And if you don't believe me, just put a couple of drops of sodium hydroxide on your skin sometime. It'll start to smoke, and just like nitric acid or hydrochloric acid. So they're pretty potent stuff.
Yeah, well, they've got some paint stripper that'll do that to you too. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for discussing all of that with us today. We're going to have Vern back on here quite a bit. I hope. I love having him on as a guest. He's very knowledgeable about things. He's very practical about things, and that's what we want this show to be all about. We don't want to push you in any direction. All we're doing is telling you from our point of view, and you're free to make up your own minds. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what we'd want you to do, is make up your own mind. And that's no bull. Today's show is brought to you by HempWorks and MyDailySprays.com. My Daily Sprays are the effortless daily wellness in a simple daily spray. The newly formulated daily sprays are delivering more potent effects and more targeted results than ever before. Thanks to a genius little micronized delivery system, daily sprays are the go-to vitamin spray to help your body get what it needs throughout the day. With proven natural ingredients and extensive third-party testing to ensure quality and safety, daily sprays are the pocket-sized way to live each day in health and confidence. To check out MyDailySprays.com, go to www.mydailysprays.com/Terry Narens. That's TERINEHRENZ. www.mydailysprays.com/Terry Narens. See you soon.